before you kick off with this morning session, I have a very special announcement to make. I just want to say a massive congratulations to my co-host, Mark Evans, who has literally just been announced as the non-executive director at the Marketing Society. Massive achievement there, Mark. And of course, that just basically adds to the string of various titles that you have. Is it before or after your name, whatever it may be? But just wanted to say, a massive congrats, and that we're all proud of you at the School of Marketing for what you're doing and how you're disrupting and making a massive dent in our industry. So there you go. Just a bit of a plug for you there, Mark. But I'll hand to you to get started with Richard.
Thank you, Ritchie. That's very kind. I'm really proud and privileged to be part of that organisation, which has been so kind to me. But to reassure, this is my most important job. Let's just be clear on that. But anyway, moving on. Welcome, Richard Huntington. Brilliant to have you on the show. Somebody who I don't say this very often, but I'd like to call a friend.
Yeah.
I one of these people who doesn't necessarily think of work colleagues as friends, but we've been on quite a journey, our organisations and us. So I'm delighted to have you on. I did a little trailer video and I said we're going to have the wit and genius of Richard Huntington, so literally no pressure. But I know you're up for it, not least because you've got two massive jobs. You're both Chief Strategy Officer and Chairman of Saatchi Saatchi, an incredible agency. For those who don't know it, when you walk over the threshold, it says nothing is impossible. And that really characterises their philosophy. Rich has been in his role for 13 years, which I think has allowed him to benefits of longevity, utilise and develop a quite brilliant mind. And so he oversees really all the intellectual output of the agency and therefore ultimately the strategies that many successful and varied clients have used. I asked Magnus, who Richard has worked with for many years and was a guest on the show, just to say a few words. I don't know if you caught this, Richard, but this is what Magnus said. What makes Richard Huntington great is that he is a child in all the best ways. He is as excited as a child, as curious, as questioning, with that desire to keep learning and the ability to adapt, even though he hates adapting. He's a reminder to all of us never to let the flame in our inner child die out. And that inner child has helped brands like EE, HSBC, BT, Marie Curie, many, many more. And of course, Direct Line, where we've had a lot of success. And it's great that Wendy's on this as well. Wendy Moore's from DLG, because we've had a lot of success together. Never perfect, never done, but great along the way. Richard is a agency guy. He recently wrote a love letter to the agency. We'll hear a lot about the evangelism of what agencies bring to the world. He does many, many other things as well. He's involved in a company called Lift, or an entity called Lift, which is one of London's highest profile festival of theatres and performing arts. I can promise it won't be dull. Razor sharp brain, and as I said, great wit. So fantastic to have you on the show, Richard.
Wow, Mark, that's one extraordinary introduction, and weird from Mags. What Magnus? What a he's such a perceptive and person. I think sometimes I've never heard him say that, but it's extraordinary.
There you go. We've all learned something new, or we're all going to learn something new today. But I think it's very resonant. So, Richie, do you want to get us started?
Let me certainly do that. And Richard, just for myself, I mean, what an absolute pleasure. I had the honor of hearing you speak a number of years ago when you did a guest talk for us at the School of Marketing at Saatchi and Saatchi. And quite perhaps coincidental, the fact that you actually work with the theatrical company, because what I found was your presentation style was absolutely passionate and theatrical in many ways, but the insights were absolutely bang on. Clearly, the world has changed from that time now, where we're all sitting across cameras, mobile phones, and laptops. How's your presentation style changed over the last year, and perhaps more generally, how have you been coping when not being able to see as many people as you have over the last couple of years?
I mean, I think it's been a uniquely frustrating and an illuminating period. I mean, such an opportunity to think about our lives, our businesses, and the wider world. But I would say it's not been without its frustrations. And if I'm being really honest, I think I'm, almost I don't know, half the strategist that I was. I think that not having that live interaction, I'm struggling with a lot, and whether that's external stimulus or whether that's the ability to express myself. It's so difficult to communicate in a meaningful way. I can transact, but I think, you talked about that. So much of what I think I do is about performance. I know that's going to sound really weird from a point of view of strategy, but it is about performance, and it's so constrained. So I'd say I struggled a little bit with this whole environment. And I think as we've moved from, a world in which what we were asked to do was merely survive, and we did that, got through the day, we got through the week, we made sure our businesses stayed on an even keel. We got to the end of last year. I think the reality of this year is we have to do all of that, but excel. There's now no latitude, is it? We need to be brilliant in conditions that I think have made us super efficient, but I'm not sure how effective ultimately are. It's almost like we're building a wall with bricks and no mortar, because we don't have that visceral. We try, but we don't have that visceral connection between us.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about effectiveness and efficiency. Often confused within the marketing world.
Yeah.
But a lot of your role is performance and drama to get clients to see a bigger idea, a bigger possibility. And so you're still having to do that. I mean, even though it's not brilliant in the. So how are you? What are you reapplying or relearning in the way that you create drama and perform? Because you are, if anybody's not seen Richard, perform live, he's just a great presenter. So how are you doing that? How have you adapted?
Well, I think maybe it's going back to the source. The only reason that any of that sort of exists in this sort of, I mean, I tried to take Eddie Izzard and I think Peter Snow on election night and mash them up as a sort of performance style. It really came from early in my career when I was across the table from clients who knew infinitely more about their business and category than I would ever do, and I figured this way out through, which was, well, hold on, but if I'm more passionate about your product, your service, your brand, or your business than you are, or at least I bring equal passion, then I can find a way to, honestly, as an introvert, to deal with the intimidation in lots of ways. And so if that performance is really about channeling passion, and that is possible in this environment. I think it relies a lot on storytelling, so upping the storytelling, upping the metaphor, and I think also presentation, where I always think at the beginning of a presentation, by and large, you need to make sure everybody knows it's not going to be double maths. So doing something early on that whether it's an anecdote or an analogy or a whatever, or just a weird image, I think it's so important. So it's bringing some of that to this very two-dimensional world.
Richard, I want to pick up on one of the words that you mentioned just now, where you termed yourself as an introvert. Now, clearly, the stereotype of an introvert would be a deep thinker, and certainly that's where you're fitting in from your planning background is clearly in the heartland of that stereotype. And yet, clearly, we were talking about a very sort of uplifting performance when you're in front of clients. I mean, how do you marry that up? And a lot of people perhaps have misconceptions about what introversion is. And so I just wanted to get your take on introversion equals presentation versus sort of deep thinking.
Yeah, no, I think, and we all need to be careful when we use labels like that we aren't sort of. I think sometimes you kind of say, well, I'm like this, and therefore you lean into that, but I think I've come to terms with the fact that in an extrovert's industry, I am more on an introverted sort of side of the scale, and I understand that to mean simply that my energy comes from time spent with myself, thinking about stuff and recharging. My energy doesn't necessarily come from interactions with huge numbers of other people, and I think that actually presentation and performance is a way introverts use to engage with larger numbers of people. I mean, it's almost like a tool or a mask that I'm able to put on, and I think honestly I would say I'm more comfortable with 200 people than I am with 10, and whereas I think possibly an extrovert with 200 people is going, oh my goodness, I have to shake hands and get to know each and every one of these people, whereas for me it's less like that. So I don't see that there's a contradiction in that, and I think I do want to be clear that, you know, with one or two coping mechanisms, our world should be equally as a home for introverts as extroverts. You know, we need everybody, and we certainly need some people that can go away on their own and think a little bit.
Love the way you bring coherence in what seems like a contradiction, and that's a lot about the way that I guess your brain works, finding the patterns, finding the breakthrough. How do you stay stimulated? I know you set yourself reading challenges, but how do you feed your brain?
I mean, honestly, I think it's just piling as much weird shit into it as possible. I use that phrase very advisedly. I mean, I think I really value the randomness of input, because I think if you're going to figure some stuff out, you need a lot of different inputs and sources of stimulus. And so I always think that if a colleague of yours doesn't walk past your desk in the old days and think what you're reading looks clinically insane, then you've got a problem. Because what I mean by that is there's no competitive advantage for me in reading or consuming the same inputs as other strategists in other agencies or the clients for whom I'm trying to bring a different perspective. I don't think agency people have a role if they replicate or duplicate the perspective client organizations have themselves. So I'm a big fan of weird shit. And we mentioned reading challenges. I kind of like just inventing a weird reading challenge, like I'm going to read 12 political biographies over the next 12 months, see if I don't. And actually I did that during 2018, which was the centenary of the end of the First World War. I made them all about people who had lived during that period. It's total planner sort of nonsense. But a good example of taking a framework and applying it to what you're doing, and therefore finding a really weird and curious journey through. And I'm just saying all of that because it's those unexpected inputs that you will use at some point in the future, where you will use those stories, that inspiration, those examples, and I think that one of the strategist's greatest tools is analogy, because you're trying to show people something that doesn't exist, and so you're bound to say it. You know, it's a little bit like this. After all, remember when they do pitches for movies, don't they say, you know, Alien is Jaws in space? Like you're using metaphor to kind of try and show a future that doesn't exist.
Richard, you've kind of touched a little bit on perhaps what I want to kind of move on to. But just for context, some people in the audience may or may not know that Richard is probably the brainchild behind transformational campaigns across the UK. I mean, people like BT, EE, and even Direct Line Group have literally used Richard's thoughts, brains, and insights to transform their companies. So for all those who may not be as familiar with the marketing world, that's the kind of ilk and prestige that Richard comes from. But Richard, the one thing I want to ask is, you talk about all these sort of crazy ideas and crazy notions that you're constantly kind of fulfilling from the ether to kind of create those wacky ideas that come forth. But clearly, a lot of organizations you've worked with are rather conservative in nature. So how on earth do you get to convince those people that those wacky ideas are right for them?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I love the idea of wacky ideas, but I know exactly what you mean. I think that there are two parts to a good strategist. Is part logic and part magic, and I don't want to dial down the logic side of things. And in that mode, I'm super rational and almost belligerently binary. Like I think it's when you're diagnosing a problem and you're trying to find that the base sort of framework for strategy. It is about going, well, am I trying to grow the market, or am I trying to grow my share of the market? Do I want more customers, or do I want customers to buy more? How do I want to create value? Do I want to be a new entrant in a big new category, or do I want to dominate and show my superiority in an existing category? That's still super essential. And I'd say probably I'm off the scale then at that moment in terms of being super rational and as I say, binary, because, you know, lots of organizations, well, in truth, don't we grow our customer base as well as increasing the value of our customers? But I kind of like being, no, we'll build the strategy in a ruthless manner, accepting whatever happens. So there's got to be a framework, a logical framework that at least people can say, I understand how you're engaging with this problem. And then the stuff that happens afterwards has got a basis in logic and a basis in a plan that you are trying to achieve, and that makes it all the more easier. I think I wouldn't underestimate the way in which often we and as marketeers and within organizations get so bound by the orthodoxies of our category that it's incredibly hard to see outside. And actually the process is often one of opening up the world outside a category. And I think great marketing has always been about bringing the outside into an organization. So I think you'd be surprised. I find that almost that liberation is usually welcomed with open arms, even if it's not the ultimate solution. It's just it's a way of opening up people's thinking. And then I'm going to talk about passion again, because I think that's a winning ingredient, particularly in our world where you can't ever know exactly how successful something's going to be when you start on the journey. You know, maybe in the world of consultancy, you can say, give me 30 million quid and I'll give you back 150 million quid. In our world, it's somewhat less predictable than that. And I think that, you know, extraordinary success is very hard to predict.
Richard, I love the way you belligerently binary. Basically what you said, what's the business objective? Let's not lose sight of that.
Yeah.
And magic and logic. So, well, we could go. We're overwhelmed with questions already a little bit, so our bad. But lovely just to let your conversation roll. But I do want to take a step back and understand how did you get here? So what's been the potted history to this point? And you might want to talk about being mugged in Vietnam. That's an option, but I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a story of incredible highs and lows. You know, clearly I'm a child of my privilege in terms of my ethnicity and my gender. So I don't want to overstate a kind of traumatic journey. And in fact, the truth is that I have led a very monogamous life when it comes to employers and agencies. I really basically work for three organizations, three amazing companies, Abbott Mead Vickers, HHCL and Saatchi Saatchi in a 30-year career. So and I often wonder whether that shows. John Peel, I think, when asked why he'd been at Radio 1 for so long, said it's either an admirable commitment to public service broadcasting or a woeful lack of talent and ambition. I'm never really sure whether, you know, my tenure is a result of one or the other. But what I realize in all of that is I crave being part of the furniture of an organization. I crave being part of culture. I think that's the reason I've got this strange chairman title. Is it's about being part of something, and I think that's what's governed my career as much as anything has been a desire for influence and impact, as opposed to perhaps high altitude marketing output. So I'm much more known for long running successful campaigns than perhaps one-off creative extravaganzas. And I've come to terms with that. And I think, you know, what I love the most is like, I was there at the beginning of EE. I'm still there building that brand. I've been on an extraordinary journey with you, Mark, on and everybody else on Direct Line. I like being connected. So it is actually in a way a story of consistency. Once I'd got into this industry, which wasn't particularly easy, even for somebody who looks and sounds like me.
I really like that, and I think consistency in many ways holds the key to the marketing game in many senses. Richard, I want to come on to a question, or perhaps two questions, but related from Matt. So Matt works at TSB, great guy. So what he asks is, what are your top 3 tips to deliver a great presentation? And as part of that, perhaps maybe a quirky anecdote in the mix, where he says, what was the most random pitch you've ever done?
Okay, wow. Okay, so top 3 tips, like they're quite crunchy. I really believe in that it's not double maths. I mean, unless it is double maths, in which case do it. I think there's a distinction, by the way, between presentation and performance. Presentation is when you're presenting something. It could be a piece of creative work. It could be a research debrief. There are presentations. Don't get me wrong, but by and large, what we're doing is performing, and that should. You're an ad agency or you're in marketing, and you're got the ear of the CEO who's got a million awful things going on, and this is actually a conversation about optimism, positivity, and growth. So I think making people know it's not double maths. I like things like hard starts, get stuck straight in, and hard finishes, none of that sort of drifting out of a presentation or handing over to people. And I think that this is going to sound really wanky, but I did a presentation to Gordon Brown in number 10 just after the financial crisis has started, and I was talking about purpose in marketing, and I got onto a point where I was discussing the merits of Innocent getting people to knit woolly hats for people, and I had this awful moment of thinking, I'm in number 10 talking to the Prime Minister about Innocent drinks, and I'm a complete marketing charlatan. I completely froze. I think that was the most random and weird pitch, and I don't think I contributed much either to his political fortunes or to the course of the global economy, but it was a moment. That is an extreme outlier in terms of the opportunities we would get in the world. But you ducked the question about getting mugged in Vietnam. So I'm going to draw us back to and invite you to talk about how one's own personal experiences can provide a metaphor that can transform a category. Yeah. So let's do that. Richard. Yeah. So I'm passionate about the input needs to be real, and I don't care where that reality comes from. So that real can be data, real can be conversations, real can be your own experience. What I hate are made up contributions to the marketing process, things that pass as insight but are wishful thinking, and so I will get to that point. When we were in our early conversations with you and the Direct Line team, I was thinking a lot about insurance, and I happened to be in Vietnam doing a workshop. I mean, that we would get these days to go to Vietnam for a workshop, and I had my phone stolen by a scooter, and I thought, this is all fine, this is great. I can get back to the hotel, and I'll close down my iCloud, and I'll tell my wife I was on the phone to that everything's okay. Got back to the hotel, and my bags had been stolen from the concierge. And the point about all of that was, it taught me in the moment that what I really wanted was somebody to sort out my problem, as opposed to a shoulder to cry on. And it taught me a lot about the need for effective action, which over empathy to a certain extent, which we use to great effect on the Fixer campaign for Direct Line. But I think the point was to bring a visceral, real story to life, to perhaps help somebody on the receiving end to understand the truth of what you're saying. So you can provide that truth through 2,000 people on a piece of survey data, through enormous volumes of first-party data. But you could also provide that truth through your own experience, when somebody can look into your eyes and go, you are coming from somewhere that's real. That's what I think I mean. And I would encourage everybody to understand that your own experience is your first port of call when you're trying to solve a problem. It may be that your own experience is totally unrepresentative and you'll need to put it aside along the way. But why not start in that moment of naivety at the beginning of a process with, what do I feel about this problem? How do I engage? As I am a child of my culture and this category. So what do I think? That I think so often as marketers we're told that that's illegitimate, and I think that anything that is truthful has legitimacy in our world.
Wow. Richard, that's, I mean, unbelievably insightful from my perspective, and you know, it's quite rare that marketers actually, you know, with the whole data sort of thing kicking in, that there's a counter view to that. So that's great. By the way, Keith just says that the Woolly Hats campaign for Age UK was brilliant. So someone's giving you a nod on that. So don't worry, you know, you're fine on that front. Maybe Gordon didn't take too much heed, but we certainly we're fine there. I want to ask a question from Raju, who's from Jeddah. And it sort of plays a little bit, I think, into this sort of where the magic logic sort of line sits in some ways. But he talks about in fact, we're getting so many questions that it's kind of moving up the chain. There we go. He talks about the fact that management consultants like McKinsey and Bain are clearly stepping into a lot of that brand strategy and consultancy work, and perhaps stepping on the agency toes in that respect. Just wants to get a point of view as to the level of threat that you see that playing out. And do you think there's a counter from an agency landscape?
So I think part of me feels that we can be frenemies, and there's a big consulting firm inside Publicis Group, Sapient, and I've grown and learned so much working alongside them because they approach problems in very, very different ways. So I welcome the contribution that consultants bring. I would like to say though that I feel we're different as people, as a community, that there's space in our world for serendipity, magic, accidents, illogicality, drumming gorillas that sell chocolate. You know, like there's space in our world for the things that seem uncommercial, illogical, and play with the reality of the way human beings operate and make decisions, as opposed to perhaps a kind of a cold, logical perspective. So I want to keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I think there's so much that we can learn from that world. But we also need to be really clear as marketers more broadly and creative agencies more specifically why we're different and what added value we're bringing. And for me, that's in the stuff, as I said, the stuff you can't predict will be hugely successful. I've often sort of said it's not quite true, but the only thing that's predictable in advertising is that bad advertising won't work. Everything else, who knows? I mean, you know, if you have a 1 in 10,000 idea, you get a 1 in 10,000 reward.
Just to build on that point about the relationships, you describe your clients as families, or at least you do by virtue of the fact that you have an annual family dinner.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, I am going to put the record straight. You did handle Brian Blessed extremely well. That was the gift of an impossible challenge. We don't need to talk about it, but hopefully the scars.
No, what he said to me.
Yeah, indeed. But so family is maybe an unusual word to use in terms of trying to frame the relationship with clients. So just tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, and I almost think that idea of family, of different parts of a family with different perspectives, but bonded by common experience, and in our world bonded by shared agendas, felt like it was a little bit on the wane, and you know, we were under pressure, and I think client organizations were under pressure to make decisions around agencies purely on a sort of, you know, procurement basis, and I think what I've learned so much about the last year is by and large, one of the first conversations or phone calls I think that many organizations made was perhaps to their most trusted agency partner, which is along the lines of, we need some help here. And I think one of the big learnings for me last year was, we call it, family or at least partnership. Having alongside you a group of people from outside your organization that care passionately about your brand, will fight for you to their dying breath, are tribal. I mean, I remember that's the other thing about creative agencies, and certainly the broader marketing community, is that we have strange conflict rules and contracts. But what one of the upsides of that is we have these tribal beliefs in the brands that we fight for. And I think that's what family for me. It came. We've talked about it for a long time. It came into such sharp relief over the last year, I think it mattered where organizations had strong agency partnerships who could just click into place and knew what had to happen, because frankly, we were all in a very difficult position, regardless of whether a sector was up or down as a result of the crisis. That's, I think, that's why I believe in family, and why I believe in the power of proper partnership between client organizations and their agencies.
Richard, we talk about that relationship, and clearly Saatchi and Saatchi's is definitely probably the most quintessential creative agency out there. Probably one of the most famous, clearly one of the most famous ones as well, but very much known for the type of creative, big bang communication campaigns that are transformative in nature. Now, the world is sort of moving on, and one of my big bugbears with marketing and the way it's described is it tends to all be about communication. And so this sort of relates a little bit to a question that Adam Hackett has pitched out to you. And he talks about, where do you believe agencies can tackle perhaps wider problems than not just one of the 4C of one of the 4Ps, which is the promotion P. Do you see that evolving even in quintessential agencies such as yours?
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily make the distinction between agencies and marketing communities within those organizations. I do think that when we create ideas collectively that are super powerful and transformative, they have the power to influence all of an organization's activity. And ultimately, I think that that's our direction of travel together, to put the ideas that marketing creates at the heart of organizations in order to help shape the experiences, products and services that you build, in order to help guide the cultures that you create, and also to govern external reputation. I think in large service and organization brands, that for me is the only game in town. How do you place the quality of marketing thinking at the heart of an organization, and not around the outside of its operations? And that, I mean, I use this phrase, which, to be clear to everybody, I stole, which is that we need to make marketing and brands, which are a great tool, a great commercial tool, instrumental and not purely ornamental. And I think that's the direction of travel for all of us.
Keith's made a really good comment in the chat. Totally agree, passion and empathy in our business is crucial, but unfortunately it's been taken over by AI. So I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was in Japan, maybe China, an AI matched a human in terms of directing a commercial. So what's your take on artificial intelligence, Richard?
Nice
small.
What is your take on that? I think look, there's some things that I hold to be eternally true, and maybe that's the result of my age and maybe there's some stuff that I hold to be true that simply isn't true, and I'll be proved wrong. But what I would say on top of all of that is, if there's one thing you can say about marketing and advertising, is that we have a very we have a very chameleon-like way of defining that. In fact, we refuse to be pinned down particularly, and it allows it needs to be what it needs to be. I think of that like when I think about a regulatory environment. Society creates the regulatory environment we work in because society allows us to do what we do. As long as we stick by society's rules, we're allowed to grow and evolve. And just I think AI is another input into the way that this thing that we do will change. So I think I just want to be clear that I think everything's open and up for grabs. And though I might think there are some eternal important things about creativity and about marketing, I'm not sure I'm ever right on that. Like I think we should be embracing how we change, if that makes any sense.
Certainly does there, Richard. Thanks for that. We've got so many questions coming in that I'm just going to keep going with this because I want to get some sort of more audience participation in there. There's one from Dario Pagani. Hi, Dario. And I love this, kind of alluding back to your sort of thoughts around family. And he says, you can choose your friends, but not your family. So can you tell us about conflict within client relationships and some examples of resolutions?
Yeah, I mean, there should be conflict, shouldn't there? I mean, what's the point? In as much as the tension that you set up when you have an internal perspective and external perspective is super powerful, just as the tension that you should be setting up within an agency between the strategist, the creative, and the people that make things and do things. I think that healthy tension and conflict is really important, and it's about how we navigate all of that. Because after all, why come to an external brand advisor if you don't want to be questioned and to be challenged? If you simply want somebody to do the pretty pictures. I remember one of the things I feel passionately about the failure of the 2016 referendum was that the client, so the group of people that were directing the referendum, went to the marketing industry and asked for pretty pictures and not for a solution. And there was no conflict. It was also probably because there were a huge number of like-minded people who believed the eternal truth of their cause. And I think there's got to be healthy conflict within the family, and we just need to find ways. I think if you feel that there's a passionately shared agenda, you can resolve most conflict. If you believe that the agency wants the same thing as you, is just arguing till their dying breath that we do it in a different way, then that's fine. If you sniff out that an agency has got a different agenda to you, or perhaps the client's got a different agenda to their organization, or what the agency believes is right, then you've got problems. That's a bit of a rambling answer, but I think for somebody who's personally conflict averse, conflict is at the heart of a healthy relationship with agencies and clients.
That dynamic tension you talk about, I'm interested about how that plays out on a global scale. So we talked about doing workshops in Vietnam, and I'm also sort of reminiscing for times of travel in the past. But you've had to deal with all sorts of different cultures, some of which are more hierarchical, more differential, more inherently conflicting. I mean, it's just it's true around the world. There's lots of different cultures. So how does your MO have to adapt when you have to factor in those sort of cultural references?
Honestly, I don't know how successful it is, and I don't know how well it translates. I think one of the regrets I have in my career is not experiencing the world from the perspective of other cultures. So I've done lots of global work, but I haven't, worked innately in another culture, whether that's the West Coast of America or China. And I think I see that now as a profound regret, because I think I would have learned better how to not only understand culture from a kind of how do you communicate, how do you build brands and communicate, but how do you behave personally? And there's a very serious bit of me that believes I could never now get a job in the US, because I wonder whether actually this whole thing I do is not appropriate, is not, welcome. So I've not cracked that. I don't want to pretend that I can wander around the world doing what I do and everybody's equally as enthusiastic. It's an approach developed in a particular circumstance.
Appreciate your honesty on that point, Richard. That's very good to hear.
Yes. Richard, I'm really afraid that we're sort of running out of time here. We got literally a minute to go, and a couple of questions unanswered, which I'm probably sad we won't get to. So I just want to really sum up and then pass over to Mark for some of his closing remarks. The one thing that you didn't say in this talk this morning, but you said elsewhere, which I really just want to think, or really sort of kind of framed, you in my mind, was when you talked about that no commercial problem is unsolvable without enough creativity, imagination, and intelligence. Those three key levers. And I just thought that was just a brilliant line that you used, which really epitomizes, I think, what Saatchi's is all about. Clearly, it's on the door, but nothing is impossible, and clearly what you're all about as well. So it's been absolutely brilliant having you on this morning, Richard. And I just want to talk a little bit about some of the key highlights for me and some of the things that I picked up on. The first thing is, when developing strategy, your thought process around being binary in the business objective that you're trying to solve for was super insightful for me. The combination of logic and magic, the element of theater and performance when you're trying to convince an audience, again, was really insightful. And the fact that those CEOs are probably coming to you for a bit of entertainment and enthusiasm and futuristic sort of thoughts, in the role that you're doing. You talked a little bit, and I think you were humble when you said, you're all about consistency of clients. And when you mentioned family, I actually think that's brilliant, quite frankly. And I think there are too many people going after a short-termist view, and you're certainly not one of them. And I think that's what's really made you stand out and stay the test of time with all the clients that you currently work with. You gave us a lot of tips around presentation aspect. Finally, and I'll move to Mark after this, you mentioned around conflict being a good thing within a family environment, and we should try and foster that more to get some of the best creative outputs. So Richard, just from me, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Richie. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Richie. You've caught the lion's share of what I was going to say, but maybe a couple of things on top. My key takeaways. Let's remember it's not double maths. Love it. The importance of weird shit and randomness. Yeah, clearly. That links to the balance of logic and magic. But always root the problem back in the business objective, what the business is trying to achieve. You talked a lot about passion as a winning ingredient. I got a stronger sense than I ever realized about your identity with belonging and being part of something, which is manifested in longevity, but I also think links to your passion. And that's why you allow yourself, which I think is absolutely right, to talk to your own experiences for insight at the outset of a big problem. Magda's talked about having the mind of a child. I mean, I think if that's the way you want to frame it, that's fine. But nonetheless, you do have a great mind, and applaud you for that. We've had lots of comments and questions. People want to find out how they get more from you. Where can I access Richard's wisdom and genius? Maybe you have a blog or something. But from my point of view, and on behalf of everybody, Richard, I really want to thank you for your time. It's been fascinating understanding how a strategist brain and a top-class strategist brain actually works to fix problems in the world. So thank you once more.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Richie. Really appreciate it.
Richard, just so you know, a couple of great comments coming through. Charmingly humble. I love the one from Joki. Humble Huntington. There we go. That's a new name coined for you. But it's just, I think everyone's really enjoyed the session. So.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard. Great weekends, everybody. See you next week. We've got James Brett on, a story of tragedy to triumph. I've never met somebody who's had so much adversity thrown at them in their lives and come back and turn it into such an amazing thing. If you watch the trailer, you'll know there's sexual abuse, suicide in the family, bankruptcy, homelessness, cancer 3 times, prison, drug addiction. And yet he turned it into something called Plant for Peace, which is transforming large parts of Afghanistan from growing heroin into growing pomegranates, to try and do his bit to change the world. You're in for quite an emotional one next week, but hopefully see you then and have a great weekend.